The reason that I said that is because what's happening right here, I'm playing rubber guard, and I got very excited because I saw an opening for a gogoplata, and I was definitely trying to force my foot in front of his face a lot harder than I should have. That meant that my toes came much closer to my face than my knee did, which every doctor and every physical therapist has told me is like the worst possible thing you can do for your knee. And I heard and felt a terrible pop, just like I heard and felt a terrible pop when I blew out my other knee like 2 years ago. So mild panic that I had destroyed my knee completely. So I crutched around for about a week. I got an MRI, which this actually is not footage of me in the MRI because the camera would have been destroyed by the giant magnet in the room. So here's some stock footage. But I saw the ortho, and very fortunately for me, no tears, no surgery. I need PT for like 5 weeks and then I'm good to go right back at it. I have a grade 1 ACL sprain, a grade 1 MCL sprain. Part of the muscle in my calf is like pulling off the bone a little bit, but all things considered, could have been a lot worse. Unfortunately, like in all sports, injuries are something that happen in Jiu Jitsu. But according to the Insurance Information Institute, in 2021, martial arts was number 20 on the list of sports injuries for people aged 15 to 24. And 18th on the list for people aged 25 to 64. And that's all martial arts combined together, not just BJJ specifically. Horseback riding is higher on the list. Fishing is higher on the list. So yeah, BJJ injuries happen, but Jiu-Jitsu is no more dangerous than any other sport you could participate in. In today's video, we are going to look at some of the most common injuries in Jiu-Jitsu and how you can prevent them. We're gonna start with sprained joints, but just a small disclaimer for anyone watching this video. I'm not a doctor. I mean, I could be a doctor. I have terrible handwriting and I think I'm very smart, but I'm not actually a doctor. So if you get hurt, talk to a doctor. Don't just listen to somebody on the internet. I'm not giving you medical advice. I'm giving you anecdotal advice from things that have happened in my life, things that have happened in people's lives that I know and trained with, and questions I've asked to doctors about these injuries. But not a doctor. Sprained joints is a big umbrella term, and it basically just means like it sounds. You injure a joint in your body, but not super bad and break anything. It's just like a sprain where things have been damaged due to twisting or extending or pulling. Like your elbow joint can get hyperextended in an arm bar, or your knee can get hyperextended in a knee bar. Sprains can take a long time to heal. You can be off the mat for a few weeks, and that's obviously not ideal. Every doctor will always tell you to do rest, ice, compression, elevation for a sprain, and you just basically have to give it time. A good way to prevent sprains is to, and this will be a common theme throughout the video, is to tap early. In the training room, in practice, you don't need to fight like it's the world championships out of every submission. If your opponent has something locked in, just tap and don't take an injury, live to fight another day. I also have found that really focusing on flexibility and mobility has limited the sprains that I get in my joints. I think having flexibility in those parts of my body has maybe prevented things from happening. But again, that's anecdotal. Along the same lines as a sprain would be shoulder dislocation, which is obviously way worse than a sprain. There are a lot of submissions in Jiu-Jitsu that attack the shoulder. Omoplata, Kimura, Americana. When you're using excessive force to apply these submissions, it's easy to tear up the inside parts of the shoulder. And a dislocated shoulder and tearing the ligaments in your shoulder, that's a long recovery process. Weeks, months, a lot of time off the mat. A good way to help save your shoulders is to do a lot of prehab, where you work on strengthening the muscles in your shoulder and around your shoulder. Every time I lift, I do a band shoulder mobility and strength routine. It works as a good warm-up for my lift, but it also helps strengthen those muscles to help protect my shoulders. Again, anecdotal, but I've never had a shoulder injury, and I've done this band routine for like 10 years, so do with that what you will. Everybody knows an older brown belt who has some sort of lower back problem. I think lower back injuries are pretty common just in the world in general, but also in grappling and jiu-jitsu and wrestling. Back injuries are a pretty common thing. If you've got bad posture, if you're lifting incorrectly, if you're twisting and jerking with your back where you're not really warmed up or prepared for those kinds of motions, you can very easily do damage to your back. And the recovery from a back injury can take months, but there's so many people I know who have had back injuries that it's just never right again. Once you throw your back out the first time, that's it. You just always have a bad back that always gives you problems. Focus on having good posture. Focus on core work so that your back and your core is strong and can support your spine without injuring yourself. And again, for me, I've always tried to very, 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 very carefully warm up before I do any kind of physical activity. One time when I was in my early 20s, so that's why it didn't linger forever, I injured my back because I did not warm up at all. I just jumped on the mat right away because I was late to class and I started training, and it took forever for my back to feel normal. I have never ever done that again. Even if I'm late, even if I'm rushing, I will always make sure I do a good solid dynamic warm up to get my back moving, my body moving, so when I start rolling, I'm not ice cold and I throw my back out, because now I'm in my mid-30s and I would probably die from that. Not really, but that would suck. Warm up, focus on your core, good posture. I am living in knee injury city right now. It sucks. I've done it before. I'm doing it right now, and I would hope to never do it again. In Jiu Jitsu, the most common way we injure our knee is through heel hooks and knee bars and leg locks. Yeah, you have wrestling injuries, and there's other ways you can injure your knee. It's not exclusive to leg locks, but leg locks, the goal is to twist your opponent's knee up, and that is what injures your knee. Now, for me, I was lucky. I didn't tear anything, and I'm gonna have 5 weeks off the mat. So this is a minor knee injury, and I'm gonna miss training for over a month. So avoid this if at all possible. When I tore things in my knee and had to have surgery, it was 8 months, and that was on the fast end of things. They originally estimated a year, but I just went super fast because I was fortunate with my recovery. Again, a good prevention is to tap early. If you're not familiar with leg locks, if you're rolling with someone who is good at leg locks and you don't know what you're doing, just tap early. Don't learn the hard way where the limit is for you and where damage can occur. What makes leg locks dangerous is that the line between I'm okay and I've done damage is very, very, very small, and you often don't know you're crossing that line until it's too late. Obviously, work on your leg lock game. Drill your leg locks, drill your leg lock defense. Use your leg locks in sparring and in competition, but you need to know where your limit is. You need to know the mechanism of how the leg lock attacks the knee so you can know how to keep your knees safe. I'm not trying to fearmonger about leg locks because I love leg locks. They will be a big part of my jiu-jitsu game forever, but they are the number one way that we hurt our knees in jiu-jitsu, so we need to be smart with them. Tap early and strengthen the muscles around your knee. Strengthen the muscles in your legs, not just to prevent the injury, but the reason that my recovery from my last knee injury, it progressed so quickly, is because the muscles in my leg around my knee were already very strong going into rehab, going into recovery. If I wasn't strong in those muscles, it would have taken a lot longer for my knee to heal. I think we all know someone who, when it comes time to put the gi on, they use 2 rolls of tape to tape their fingers. I don't have great fingers because I've been grabbing gis and ripping and pulling on my fingers for a decade and a half-ish at this point. But finger and wrist injuries are something that will happen a lot in jiu-jitsu. It's just the nature of the sport. You're just grabbing and pulling gis and arms and legs. It's gonna cause damage to your hands. One good way to prevent this is to tape your fingers to give them extra support, which I do from time to time, but I don't like to tape so much that I become dependent on it. If I can't roll without taping my hands because it will make my fingers hurt, then I've crossed into a territory of being dependent on tape. I don't want that. Also, I don't play spider guard at all. It's a great position and there's a lot of great attacks there, but that sleeve grip and that pulling and the guy pulling back and forth just murders my fingers. And that's why I play a lot of lapel guard, because I like grabbing the tail of the lapel. It doesn't yank my fingers in such a concentrated way. It's a better grip for me. I think that I have a lot more attacks from there anyway than I do from spider guard, but play around with different grips, see what feels comfortable for you and see what hurts and what doesn't, and then don't do the one that hurts. So there you have it. That's 5 very common injuries in jiu-jitsu and some ways that you can prevent them. Remember, staying injury-free in jiu-jitsu involves a little bit of pre-planning. It involves a little bit of work before you get on the mat. It involves a little bit of mobility, a little bit of flexibility, and it involves a lot of tapping early and not taking chances. Will you get hurt in jiu-jitsu? Maybe. I mean, you're probably going to get bumps and bruises along the way like you do in any sport, but we can do things to prevent major injuries, because major injuries mean we can't do anything and they're major disruptions in our life, not just our jiu-jitsu life. So stay safe, follow these tips. If you have any other tips for preventing injury, let me know down in the comments, and that way other people can see them and benefit from them too. Thank you so much for watching. I will see you in the next video.